For this film, we're going back in time, almost literally. No, we don't have a time machine, but if you've watched our films, you will know that in July 2024, we did a film at the Big Athlestan dig in Malemesbury in Wiltshire, which is a town about 15 miles away from where we live. Steve will put the link in for you so that you can watch that film. Well, this weekend, we actually went back because there was another dig, a much smaller dig this time. At the Big Athlestan dig, there were 13 small test pits all over Malemesbury. We filmed at some of them. One we didn't film in was near the United Reformed Church. And in that very small pit was found some stones and rubble and remnants of what they thought was a wall. So they've gone back and dug up that area for the Thomas Hobbes Festival. Now, Thomas Hobbes was in his day a very famous philosopher who was born and brought up in Malemesbury and went on to become extremely famous in his day. And they think that these stones and these walls may be from his original house, which was actually, we know, was knocked down in the 1860s. So come with us as we try and find out more about Thomas Hobbes. Kim, just give me your title in relation to today's event, because you do a lot of things in the town. So
I do. I am the chair of the Thomas Hobbes of Malemesbury Society, and we have organised this weekend this first festival of Thomas Hobbes related events.
Why do something about someone that lived so long ago in this community?
He was a fantastic member of our community here in Malemesbury, and we revere him. And unfortunately, his light's been hidden under a bushel slightly, and it's time for him to see the light again. He's a fantastic man, a wonderful history of his life, and the community wanted it.
So Tony, a lot of people don't know who Thomas Hobbes is. Who is he?
Yeah, you're right. A lot of people don't know about Thomas Hobbes, but I think they should, because he's one of the world's most important political philosophers, comparable in significance to Plato, Aristotle, Rousseau, and he was born here in Malemesbury on the 5th of April 1588, somewhere near where we are standing. He had some really interesting, innovative ideas. He invented the idea of the social contract, that there was a deal between the government and the citizen, that people had to obey the law, and in return the government would look after you and protect your life. These ideas that we take for granted today were invented by Thomas Hobbes, so really important.
What did he think would happen if that social contract didn't exist then?
He thought it would lead to disorder and conflict and chaos. And he grew up in quite a turbulent time. Malemesbury was a pretty chaotic place during his childhood. I think maybe he was influenced by what he saw here. And of course later in his life he lived through the English Civil War, and he was trying to make sense of the causes of the English Civil War. And one reason was there was a lack of clarity about authority. Who's in charge around here? Is it the king? Is it the parliament? Is it the church? And his message was, no, there's got to be clarity about who's in charge. Otherwise there'll be conflict, there'll be disorder, there'll be problems. But if you get it right, then people can enjoy good lives. That was his theory.
Did he have any great works that people can refer to today?
Good question. He wrote lots actually, but he's most famous for a single work called Leviathan, which he published in 1651. And it's Leviathan where he sets out in a definitive way these innovative ideas about political theory.
And practically, did he live his whole life in Malemesbury? Did he move elsewhere? Just give us a flavour.
Okay, so he was born, we think, round about where we're standing here in 1588. He was the son of a rather disreputable local clergyman, also called Thomas Hobbes, who we think was a drunk and a gambler, and eventually got involved in a fight and had to run away from the town. So he didn't have the greatest start in life, but he did have a piece of remarkable good fortune. He encountered a fantastic teacher, a man called Robert Latimer, just a few yards away from where we are in the 1590s. He had a great education here. Robert Latimer got him into Oxford, so he went off and studied at Oxford and began his career. He became a member of the household of the Cavendish family, this particular aristocratic family. He worked as a tutor first to their children, and later on they were his patrons. We know he did come back on occasion to Malmesbury. He came back many years later in 1634, looking for his old teacher, I think to thank his old teacher. He lived a very long life. He died in 1679, and he always identified himself as Thomas Hobbes of Malmesbury on his books. And when he died, in his will, he left much of his estate to his family who were still living in Malmesbury. He didn't have any children, but his brother had a big family, and they were the main beneficiaries of his will.
Tell me, you've done research, Tony, about Thomas Hobbes in the Bodleian Library. Tell us something of what you found.
Well, there's a man called John Aubrey, who was a younger contemporary of Thomas Hobbes, who was a huge admirer of Hobbes. And he set out to write Hobbes's biography. And he gathered material for that biography while Hobbes was still alive. And then after he died, he tried to write this book, but he didn't get around to finishing it, sadly. Fragments of it appear in Aubrey's famous book, Brief Lives, but the bulk of the papers are in the Bodleian Library in Oxford. So I've had great fun going to Oxford, getting the documents out and seeing what Aubrey had to say about the early life of Hobbes in Malmesbury. And Aubrey drew a little sketch plan of Malmesbury at the time in order to show important features of Hobbes's life. He showed the church, St Mary's Church Hall, just down the way. He showed the Three Cups, the pub that we can see just over there, which was there in 1588. And he showed the cottage where Hobbes grew up. And he drew a little sketch of the cottage in the papers in the Bodleian, and we think the cottage was somewhere round here. And sadly, in 1869, the cottage was demolished. So we're on a bit of a detective hunt now to try to find out if we can pinpoint exactly where it might have been. Well, I am not an archaeologist, so I am not going to explain in any definitive way exactly what we can see here, and there's a lot of questions still to be asked. What we do know is that Hobbes's cottage was demolished in November 1869, and we have earlier 19th century descriptions of it that suggest to me that it was somewhere around here, and the buildings that we can see over here were an encroachment on the horse fair in the early 19th century. So, hey, who knows? But the archaeologists have unearthed some very interesting stonework here that over the next few months they're going to start interpreting. So we can't say for sure, but wouldn't it be so exciting if we could pinpoint and link the stonework that we can see here to Thomas Hobbes?
So within this trench we've found a pair of very substantial walls as well as evidence of flooring. Effectively what we think we have now is evidence for a nice large structure, possibly of a early post-medieval to medieval date, which would be in fitting with the Hobbes house we're looking for. What we believe we have here is that the grey stones underneath, as with the wall just to your right here, which is also grey stone, represent the foundational courses for the structure's walls. Usually they would have used cheaper, rougher stone for that, in this case a limestone. And on top of that, they have now placed these much nicer and faced to the front, these nice flat faces coming triangular inside the wall. These are nice oolitic limestone blocks. So these are the kind of yellow stone. A lot of the buildings in Malmesbury are made of this. Bath and Cirencester, you see that very common Cotswolds yellow kind of stone. So what appears is that in most cases they've demolished and robbed out all of the nice stone down to the foundation courses, and we just have the last little bits of nice stone that would have possibly been showing above ground left sitting on top of that, and that's why we've got this nice yellow course sitting on top of the grey.
Liam, this trench appears a lot bigger with a lot more stuff in. Just give us a rough summary of what we're looking at here.
The main thing we found in this trench is this very large wall that's running along its length. It's quite wide, it's almost 1 metre wide across, which would have been a fairly substantial building, potentially suggestive of something that has more than one story, as it would have had to support quite a bit of weight. It is quite rough along the face closest to us, because it appears there's been a large robbing event, probably doing the demolition of the buildings that were in this location. They've come along and they've robbed quite a lot of the stone away. So it's possible that on the right hand side trench we are looking at Hobbes's house, or a similar one that may have been backed onto the horse fair, and that on this side we've just caught the edge of another property which would have run along the street frontage of St Mary's and also belonged to a similar period.
Yes, my name's Steve Sheldon and I'm the principal fieldwork manager manager at our Kemble office at Cotswold Archaeology.
So Steve, take us through some of what's been found today and what it tells us.
Okay, well, we've had a really fantastic spread of material over the last couple of days, and we've got everything here on this side that we've washed and picked out some of the prime sort of finds. Really our earliest object at this side of the table is this very nice clay pipe base, which is marked with a local maker's mark on its foot. And at the moment we're working on the proviso that this is potentially early 17th century, so 1620 through to about 1650. Our finds experts will be able to tell us much more about that when it goes back to our office. And as we move across, we've also got parts of medieval floor tiles, which have obviously not come from here. These would be in very elaborate buildings, maybe even the abbey itself. And the interesting thing about this one particularly is it's got a very good cross-section of how it's fired, so we can see the oxidisation and also the slip running off the top of the glaze here. We've got several metal objects that we've been very lucky enough to find, including this sort of slightly mystery object, which is made out of copper or bronze. Initially we thought that this may be the handle of some sort of spoon or cooking implement, but actually it looks much more like it's a decorative item from a wooden vessel or box that's been used to sort of elaborate and colour that sort of thing there. As we move across, we've got this lovely base of a wine bottle, probably from the sort of 18th century, very thick heavy set glass, and everyone keeps turning it around that way, but actually this is the base. And this is the perimeter around the edge where the sediment would settle before you poured your wine. So probably the most decorative item that we found, and this was very early on the Saturday morning, is this really lovely gilt button with the initials BH on the front, which we now believe is part of the Beaufort hunt. And it has on the back, not only does it have the original fitting where it's stitched to the clothing, but it also has the full maker's name and address from the Strand in London, and we understand that this company is actually still in operation in the same premises and produces buttons still very similar to this today. So again, probably looking at the tail end of the 18th century, so 1780s, 1790s. It's the second button that we've had on site. We're going through here, which is a slightly more corroded version, which we can't read, and then also, just for contrast, some much later, probably Victorian buttons, and one made out of mother of pearl. The other items really to talk about on here is we're getting an awful lot of really nice late 18th century pottery, including this trailed slipware, which is probably manufactured in Bristol or Liverpool, and is quite a decorative item. You can see where the handle used to be on the side of this pot. So in terms of those ones, they're all quite specific. The other one that I particularly like is the threepenny bit from 1966, purely there because we also found a 1971 penny, and I wanted to just remind everyone who was too young to remember that it was a period of decimalisation from change from old style money to new style.
Who's just not me, because I was born in 1966. So.
I was born in 1946, so I remember.
Well, there we are. So,
well.
this is for Will's benefit and the younger generation who are here, just to remind them that the currency changed. So, and what we've got here is all the generic finds that have been washed very kindly by our volunteers whilst we've been here, including some really quite fantastic looking pieces of medieval pottery with these decorated thumbprint things on here, and an awful lot of really nice green glaze late medieval pottery as well, all the way through to really nice willow pattern and later blueprint pottery in the 20th century.
One of those, don't
You do, and what I would say is that most of the material that we have here is from either topsoil or other jumbled contexts, so demolition material. So what we're looking at is material that's been moved around an awful lot over time. So whilst it doesn't necessarily tell us exactly what the contexts themselves date to, it gives us the idea of there's so much material here that's been moved around over that period of time. And I think in total we've probably had about, just from these two smallish holes, we've probably had about 6 or 7 of these buckets full of material from the ground. And there is undoubtedly now, we're also going through the spoil heap at the present minute to make sure we've not missed anything. And equally, we've had metal detectorists out on site who were very kind enough to actually find those buttons for us, because you can't always find these when you're actually moving the volume of soil that we've moved.
There's a little key there.
We're not sure what this metal object is. It does look very much like a key, but we do have part of a metal pot in the trench to my right at the moment, and whether it is actually a handle / decorative item, something for hanging, we're not sure, but it has the look of a key. It's unfortunately very corroded as an iron object, so we need to look at that further to be certain.
Well, I hope you found that both interesting and useful. And all this leaves me to do is say thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.